The sirens still haunt me. That high-pitched wail that cut through our quiet neighborhood and shattered everything we thought we were. It was supposed to be a normal Thursday. I was 19, halfway through my first year of college, home for a weekend visit. My dad, Michael Turner, had made his famous chili, humming old Bruce Springsteen songs in the kitchen. Then the knock came. 3 hard raps that changed my life. When I opened the door, 2 officers stood there. "Are you Emily Turner?" My stomach twisted. "Yes?" "You're under arrest for property damage and obstruction of justice." I laughed, a nervous, desperate laugh. There's got to be a mistake. But there wasn't. 3 weeks earlier, my best friend Lena had been in a car accident, a hit and run. She was lucky to survive. The driver, a young man from a wealthy family, walked away unscathed, protected by lawyers and silence. I had seen everything, and I thought I was doing the right thing when I shared the footage from the night, footage that proved he'd been driving drunk. What I didn't know was that his father was one of the city's top attorneys. Within days, I became the target. They claimed I'd tampered with evidence, edited the video, even harassed the family. I tried to explain, no one listened. And as they put me in the back of that police car, I saw my dad standing in the driveway, his face pale, his hand trembling. He didn't say a word, but the look in his eyes, I'll never forget it. It said, "I will fix this, no matter what it takes."
The next morning, Dad came to the station with a lawyer. He didn't yell, didn't cry, just held my hand through the bars and said, "I'll get you out of this, Emmy. I promise." Within hours, I was out on bail. But the damage was done. My reputation was ruined. Social media was brutal. People I thought were friends called me a liar. Dad stopped going to work. He started making calls. All day, every day. Old contacts, favors, people who owed him something. He was a construction foreman, not a lawyer, but he'd always had that fighter in him. The kind of man who'd give up his seat, his job, even his pride to protect me. But something changed in him. He became obsessed. He'd stay up late reading legal documents, muttering, "They can't do this to my daughter." One night, I found him in his office, surrounded by papers, his hands shaking. "Dad, please, let the lawyer handle it," I said. He looked up at me with wild eyes. "You think these people play fair? They'll bury you, Emmy, unless I make sure they can't." There was something in his tone, desperate, dangerous. I didn't know then what he meant. The trial date came faster than I expected. Every headline painted me as a troublemaker. Student fabricates hit-and-run video for attention. Lena tried to speak up for me, but her parents begged her to stay quiet. They didn't want trouble. A week before the trial, Dad disappeared for 2 days. No calls, no texts. When he finally came home, his clothes were rumpled, his eyes red. "Where were you?" I demanded. "Working on something," he said. "Don't worry about it." I pressed him. "Dad, please, don't make it worse." He looked at me, that look again, fierce and full of love. "I'd burn the world down before I let them take you." He hugged me tight, too tight. And I felt it then, the fear beneath his strength. The courtroom was cold that morning. The marble floors echoed with every step. Reporters lined the walls, cameras flashing. Dad sat beside me, suit pressed, jaw tight. Across the aisle sat Gregory Allen, the father of the boy who hit Lena. He smiled when he saw Dad, that kind of smile that said, "You're out of your league." When the prosecution began, they tore into me, called me reckless, claimed my video was digitally altered. Our lawyer did his best, but every piece of evidence we tried to present was dismissed, every witness mysteriously unavailable. By midday, I could feel the walls closing in. Then, just as the judge called for a recess, Dad stood up. "Your Honor, I have something to submit." The lawyer looked panicked. Michael, what are you doing? Dad walked to the front of the courtroom and handed the judge an envelope. Inside was a USB drive. This is new evidence. It'll prove my daughter's innocence. Gregory Allen's face went white. The judge hesitated. Where did you get this? Dad swallowed hard. Anonymous source. But when the footage played, it was crystal clear. The boy, Evan Allen, stumbling out of his car drunk, swerving into the intersection and hitting Lena's bike. The courtroom gasped. The prosecution objected immediately, shouting about illegal evidence and unverified sourcing. The judge called a recess to investigate. As soon as the courtroom cleared, I turned to Dad. Where did you get that? He looked at me, eyes glassy. Don't worry about it, Emmy. It's over. But I did worry, because something about his tone broke my heart. That night, the police showed up again. Not for me this time. For him. They said the footage had been obtained illegally, that someone had broken into Gregory Allen's office and hacked his security system. They traced it back to Dad's laptop. I screamed. He was trying to save me. They didn't care. When they took him away in handcuffs, he didn't fight. He just looked at me with that same small, sad smile. At least they know the truth now. The next morning, the charges against me were dropped. But the price was unbearable. Dad was facing 3 felony counts: evidence tampering, unlawful access, obstruction of justice. I tried to visit him, but he refused at first. Said I needed to move on. When I finally saw him weeks later, through the glass of the visitation room, he looked older, like he'd aged 10 years overnight. Dad, why? I whispered. You could have gone to prison. He smiled faintly. I'd do it again. You're my kid. That's my job. Tears streamed down my face. You didn't have to break the law. He leaned forward. I raised you to stand for what's right. That's what I did, even if it costs me. The trial for my father was quiet, smaller than mine. No cameras this time, no headlines. He pleaded guilty to 1 count, obstruction, and the rest were dropped in exchange for community service and probation. When the judge asked if he had anything to say, he stood tall and said, sometimes the system breaks people before it helps them. I just couldn't stand by while it broke my daughter. The courtroom fell silent. Even the judge looked away. He was sentenced to 18 months of supervised probation. No prison. But the cost was clear. His job, his reputation, his peace. I hugged him outside the courthouse and whispered, You saved me, Dad. He whispered back, Now save yourself. Make this worth something.
Years passed. I finished college, became a journalist, and every story I wrote carried a piece of him. His courage, his stubborn love, his belief that truth mattered, even when it hurt. Dad eventually went back to work, smaller projects, quiet life. He never talked about the trial again, but every Sunday he'd ask, You writing something new, Emmy? And I'd smile. Always. One day I published a feature titled, The Man Who Broke the Rules to Keep His Promise. It told our story, not to glorify what he did, but to show the line between justice and desperation. When I handed him the printed copy, his hands shook. He read the first few lines, then looked up. You made it sound like I'm some kind of hero, he said. You are, just not the kind the world always understands. He chuckled softly. Maybe that's enough. Last spring, we started a foundation, Turner Justice Initiative, helping families who can't afford legal defense when falsely accused. At the opening event, Dad stood beside me, older but proud. When I introduced him to the crowd, my voice cracked. This is my father. He taught me that love sometimes looks like sacrifice, and that justice isn't always clean, but it's worth fighting for. The crowd rose to their feet. Dad blinked fast, trying not to cry. After the event, he pulled me aside. Guess we did all right, huh? I smiled. Yeah, Dad, we did. We stood there, hand in hand, watching the sun dip behind the courthouse, the same one where everything had fallen apart. And for the first time, it felt like peace. Because he hadn't just saved me, he'd taught me what it really means to stand for something, even when the world calls it wrong.